Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the Imperial HoloNet. Today, I'm joined by Connor Nielsen, Doc Holocron, Jake Carlson, Nathan Snyder, and Deadpoolzilla. And today, we're here to talk about Infinity War. 10 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe culminate together. So let's get to it, people. We're gonna do a round robin, best thing, worst thing, and then we're just gonna go all over it. So here we go. So I'll start with me. The best way to describe my best thing is through this sentence. Fun isn't something I consider when watching the culmination of 10 years worth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but this does put a smile to my face. I just love the fact that it's just such a big event. It's a crossover between everything, and I love crossovers. It's big, it's epic. It's just so good. I know that's a very vague best thing, but honestly, that is my best thing. That's how much I loved this movie from start to finish. Just everything about it. In terms of a worst thing, I can't really think of a worst thing. Maybe sometimes got a little jokey, and maybe it got a little too cut in terms of scenes, but I like it. I really love it. So Deadpoolzilla, we'll start with you first. Next, best thing, worst thing.
I would say the best thing about this film is just like the scale of it. It like this thing lives up to the scale of what it's been building up to. Well, for the most part, we'll get into little negatives here and there because this is not a perfect film, people.
Right.
Yeah. But having said that, though, this is really damn good. I think the payoff was still there. I feel like it didn't disappoint in that regard where you get the scale that this has been in the making for 10 goddamn years, and it delivers. Thanos is spectacular. The ending is soul crushing.
Yeah.
And the negatives I will say is that there were some scenes, just minor little inconsistencies. The humor I was a little more okay with, except give or take one or two, but that's small in comparison to other Marvel films. I will also say that, and I'm going to get this out of the way, we'll probably talk about it more, is that one of the inconsistencies I didn't like was I wish we were shown the destruction of Xandar and Thanos getting the Power Stone, rather than just be like, oh, he already has the Power Stone. All right.
Okay, yep. Doc, how about you? Doc Holocron, you next. Best thing, worst thing.
My best thing is that this is the first Marvel movie, I think the first comic book movie, maybe since Logan, to make me feel legitimately depressed about life. Like, just the way this movie ends. I really, really appreciate that it just doesn't hold back at all. And it just goes all out with, all these characters are dead, and the bad guy won. You could argue that Zemo was the first bad guy in a Marvel movie to win in the end, but he still did get captured ultimately. But Thanos, he wins, everybody dies, and he gets off scot-free in the end. And I think that's a really bold direction to go. And yeah, I just loved how this movie unravels. I loved all the character moments we got. There are some characters that I think could have gotten a little more to do, and we'll get into that. But overall, I was very satisfied with the balance they were able to find between all of them. My worst thing, and I thought about this a lot and had a lot of interesting things about it, I do like how Gamora's character is handled in this, but there are some problematic elements to the way that her character is killed off and the way it's done mostly for the sake of Thanos' character. And I do have a few problems with that, but we can get into that. But overall, I do think this is a great movie, and I think it's definitely worth all the time we spent building up to it.
Okay, Connor, you go next. Best thing, worst thing.
Oh my God, this is like a giant crossover. I don't think Jake Carlson and Connor have been in the same video together. They're shaking hands right now. What is happening?
Well, that was the point of the
It's a momentous occasion.
It is like 3 years of Imperial HoloNet has been culminated into this one video.
Imperial HoloNet, a little bit of Geeky Gentleman, and a little bit of Deadpoolzilla, a little bit of Doc Holocron's channel, a little bit of everything.
All of these franchises together. I've decided to measure this podcast and how many times I have to change the laundry, so I might have to excuse myself a couple of times. So my favorite thing about this movie is, I'll say overall, I really like this movie. The very idea that this Herculean task was accomplished, and I think the nigh impossible ambitions of the Russos was met is in and of itself kind of the best thing about this movie. It's almost like their idea behind this movie was, let's do Civil War plus the Avengers, but then whatever that sum is, like, square it, and then that is kind of what they wanted to do with the scale of this movie. And it is just so impressive that they were able to accomplish it. I do think that the weakest thing here is that some of its ambitions are a little bit I think by its very design it is imperfect and uneven.
Yes,
I think that when I keep forgetting Captain America is in an Avengers movie, that might be a little bit of a problem. And I think that when it comes to some of the more emotional payoffs, like I don't think I was as emotionally invested in the ending as a lot of people were. I figured this was a possibility at the end, and I was like, oh, okay, so that is the ending they went with. And I wasn't as like soul crushed as a lot of people seem to have been. I mean, that Spidey scene got me a little bit, but that had more to do with the other films. And that is like one of those things where there really isn't another movie like this where all of the heavy lifting was done in the other movies. And a lot of the payoffs do come in this movie that were set up in other movies. And I know that is by the design of this movie kind of where it goes. But I think that this in and of itself is its own cinematic experience. And as its own cinematic experience, I think emotionally speaking, I was left a little hollow in certain areas. And I think that might have to do with maybe some of the lesser overarching character relationships, i.e. I think Gamora and Star-Lord's relationship takes center stage here. And that kind of isn't necessarily the Russo's fault, but maybe just the fault of the overarching narrative. And I think when you get something this big, that is a risk, and it kind of fell into that risk. So, yeah, I did overall really like this movie, though. It is something I think everyone is going to see, and I think most people will really like.
Okay, Nate, how about you? Best thing, worst thing?
Best thing about this, probably Thanos. I pretty much loved everything about his character and where we go with him. They really handle scale well, especially the action scenes, and the effects pretty impressive for the most part. Worst, I kind of feel like the whole subplot with Cap's team just felt so underutilized because I kind of forgot about them in the second act until we got brought back to Wakanda. I was like, oh yeah, they're in this movie. But yeah, overall, I thought this was a pretty good movie. It was kind of worth it for the most part, though I'm hoping how they would handle the ending in the next one. That's my only concern with the risks they took.
Okay.
So overall, yeah, pretty good.
Okay, Jake, you here? And best thing, worst thing?
I am. So, as you guys know, I came out of this movie feeling really disappointed in Hollow.
Oh, you went quiet for a little bit. Ooh, this is the technical difficulty subplot of the story. Well, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
And fatherhood and godhood.
Jake, can you repeat a little bit? You cut out for a few seconds.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think my best thing about this movie is how they treated the themes of sacrifice, fatherhood, godhood, and how they tied all those things together pretty seamlessly through Thanos and through Tony Stark and stuff like that. And I'm going to list... Hello?
No, you're still here.
Yeah.
God. Wow.
This Skype had problems last time too, people, so this is all part of the big crossover here. It's the Skype problem with Jake.
The villain strikes again.
Exactly. Skype is the real enemy of our crossover.
Yeah, that's our Thanos.
Exactly. Oh, and there he goes. Let's see. Okay, there you are, Jake. You're back.
Hello?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, I'm sorry for technical difficulties again. This seems to be a consistent thing with me. So did you guys catch all of my best thing, or only part?
Yeah,
of
you're
it?
about some of the issues with fatherhood and Tony's arc.
Okay, so I'm gonna list two worst things because I was only gonna list one, but then the other one wasn't talked about. So my first one is really the why now question with Thanos. because I think that's the only thing about his character that doesn't work is the timeline of things and how I think that they failed to really build up to this and have it make sense retroactively why he was going around killing off half the population of planets, including Gamora's, when he was just going to get the Infinity Stones anyway. So that was a big letdown for me that it wasn't as seamless as it could have been. But my other thing, which is probably more important, is a really problematic idea that's presented in the film. And it deals with Thanos sacrificing Gamora. Because Thanos, in his own mind, thinks that he loves Gamora and puts her through all this torture and exposes her to the harsh realities of life in order to make her stronger. But then Gamora tells him, once she realizes that she's going to be the sacrifice and not him, that this isn't love, which I would agree with, because that's not what love is. But then Thanos sacrifices Gamora, and then the universe repays him by granting him the Soul Stone, which is inherently problematic. Because unless we're just portraying the universe and the way in which the Soul Stone works as love is a feeling you can have towards someone, regardless of the way that you actually treat them, whether that's ethical or not, maybe that's just what we're doing. But I think that that's something that really needs to be addressed, because that was a really problematic idea that was kind of out of the blue included in the movie that, for the most part, does some really great stuff with the rest of its themes.
I've actually heard that complaint as well, and I actually have a theory about that and why that. But we can get into that later.
Well, that was Jake's worst thing, so I guess we can. That was all you wanted to say, Jake?
Yeah, that was my best thing, worst thing.
Okay, well, since I guess that was Doc had a theory, Doc, how about you will start us off with that topic. What was your theory?
Okay, so my theory has to do with how I believe we're meant to perceive Thanos throughout the film. I don't think we're supposed to like Thanos. I don't think we're supposed to sympathize with him or understand why. I mean, you can see the methodology, you can see the dissent. I think it's believable that someone like him would come to this conclusion, even though it's clearly wrong. And the way that scene plays, it does feel like you are meant to sympathize with Thanos to some degree, but I don't think that's really the case. What I think it is that, you know how in movies like Silence of the Lambs and stuff, the filmmakers try to get you inside the head of the serial killer. So even though you know they're wrong, you can see how they operate and how their mindset is. I think that's what they're doing with Thanos in this movie. Thanos, in essence, is a serial killer. Like, he goes around to different planets, he wipes out half their population, all for the sake of this twisted sense of morality he has. And in the end, you are meant to see him as a monster. But at the same time, the movie puts you inside his head so you can see how his mind works as he's doing these things.
Yeah, but that doesn't solve the problem, because my problem isn't with Thanos, because yes, I would agree with you. He's ultimately a villain because the way he's going about solving this problem is wrong. But my issue with it is that the universe grants him this power after he's tortured this little girl for almost 20 years because he thinks that's love. So either the Soul Stone works, either the Soul Stone is given to you based on what your perception is, which is what happens, but it shouldn't be like that, because that's a really problematic thing to just give someone this great power based on what their perception, which is biased, and in Thanos' case, really like an incorrect, twisted, unethical perception of what love is. Like, that is just a really uncomfortable idea to present in the film.
I agree with that. I agree with that criticism. The thing is, I don't know if we're supposed to know exactly what the deal with the Soul Stone is, because I actually read an interview with the Russo brothers where they actually reveal that Gamora isn't just dead and that her soul is actually trapped inside the Soul Stone. So it's
Whoa, spoilers much?
Oh, well, we're not doing spoilers.
It's possible that she could come back potentially if the Soul Stone is destroyed or whatever, but also I think that opens up that there is more to the Soul Stone and the stones in general that we aren't letting on to.
I also like
Whether
to
or
point
not
out
the universe judges that entirely by your perception, I don't think is entirely defined in this movie, and that is a problem. But I am willing to give them a little bit of leeway if they address it in the next one.
I also like to point out kind of an odd thing, and this is again spoilers, but the dude giving him the Soul Stone is a Nazi, an actual World War II.
But the thing is, he's
Yeah,
not
pretty
giving
much.
him the stone. He explains to Thanos how he's like the guardian of the Soul Stone.
Which, by the way,
and-
I love that cameo. Just saying.
And the thing is, Gamora being inside the Soul Stone, like still being technically alive, still doesn't solve that problem because he's granted that power by the universe.
I
So
know.
even if they address it, like the only way for them to really rectify that is for them to say basically that they knew that what Thanos did was going to be undone by the Avengers in the next film, so that's why they let it happen. But that's just kind of a flimsy thing.
Or
So
they
I
could say, oh, I'm sorry, Jake. I thought you were done.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say that you could also say that the universe granted him that because the universe was like, yeah, I can't take this anymore. Get rid of half of them.
That's fair as well.
I guess that opens up the question of who is the universe in this scenario. Does the universe have a sentience?
Well,
Does it have consciousness?
Yeah, in the Marvel universe, it does. It's called Eternity.
Well, have we dealt with Eternity in the movies? I don't know.
This would be a cool way
No, they
to
haven't.
explore that.
Well, we didn't explore it in this movie though.
I
Yeah,
know, but
and-
like,
and that's why it's
They
the
didn't.
problem.
They had so much
because
stuff to do
because
anyway.
they didn't explain that in this film, and that kind of ties into just my big problem in general with this, which is, yes, this is the most ambitious crossover event in history, but and somebody said this early, and I think it was Joel. A lot of the payoffs of arcs, like a lot of the ground building of the characters in these films rests in other films, and that's all right. Like,
I think
except for
even Connor
Thanos.
said that.
Okay. But when I left the theater, I was like, okay, what's really the point of making a film like this that ends the way in which it did? Because we know that this stuff is going to be rectified. And I think I've answered that question for myself. But at the same time, that problem with the Soul Stone and the ending has sort of led me to this weird place where I think this film is really, really good. But at the same time, I think that because this was originally conceived as part one of the Infinity War story, where the next film was going to be part two. And I think that if they tried to wrap up this story a little bit more, for the Avengers at least, because Thanos' story is wrapped up. But I think that if they tried to wrap up more of the Avengers story in this film would feel a lot more complete and a lot less jarring for casual audience members.
That's a good point, and I just think this also brings up a good point of judging these films as films. And what I mean by that, obviously you gotta judge, story, character, all that good stuff, but I was reading a tweet earlier from a Nash, who is a former Channel Awesome producer who left, and he brought up a good point that this isn't a movie, this is a season finale. And I've heard people make this argument that the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in a way, is just television in theaters.
Pretty much is.
Where it's sort of like, this is episode... Let's see, I don't know how many movies we're in.
19.
19. This is episode 19, the season finale. And then...
Well, no, it's funny that you say that, Joel, because Infinity War 2 is going to be episode 22 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and how many episodes usually is a season of network television? 22.
That's true. So
That's really funny.
So, this is sort of like part one of the season, a 4-part arc season finale if you count Ant-Man and then Captain Marvel. So I wonder if maybe in some way we have to judge this. Not it doesn't solve your problem. I get that, Jake, but judge this not as we judge normal cinema. Like, we can't judge this same way we judge Logan or same way we judge Dark Knight. We have to judge this as almost like a television episode in a way.
Yeah, because it's literally part of a bigger story, and that's a problem that I have with the MCU in general.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's really difficult to judge these films independently without talking about what's come before, especially now that we're 19 films in, and especially with what comes after. But I will say that I think that this film is probably the most, maybe not the most successful independent one, because it is the most ambitious crossover. And now that we have the Guardians in here, you really need some background on the Guardians in order to get this stuff. But I think it's better at like telling a cosmic narrative that's somewhat self-contained in comparison to Age of Ultron, because Age of Ultron gets really tied down by a lot of that cosmic stuff, and even like telling a complete Ultron story. So I don't know.
Interesting. Well, speaking of the cosmic, I guess let's talk about the big guy himself, Thanos. And this is interesting because everyone says that this is not the same Thanos from the comics. His motivations are a little different. They don't have.
Oh no, it's not.
Oh yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's not. It knows no death. So, hello, Dipplezilla. You're as being my kind of Marvel go-to here. What are your just your thoughts on Thanos, and maybe start us off like a good section to converse about.
I would have to say, and this is going to sound a little bit like blasphemous to some people. I don't, maybe someone in this chat, but I've always liked Thanos over Darkseid. Mostly because like Thanos has feelings, and Darkseid is just like, I'm doing it because I'm evil. It's like, no, I'm doing this for a reason. But having said that, though, I do kind of like the motivations here with Thanos more than I just want to get that sweet death poon from the comics.
I'm like kind of busy right now.
Oh, Nate, sorry. Hey, Nate, could you mute?
Talking with friends.
Oh, sorry. Nate, we can hear you in the background. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I don't think Nate hears me.
Yeah. I'm good.
Okay, sorry. Continue, Deadpool.
Yeah. I did like Josh Brolin really knocks it out of the park with just how even like little facial tics right here and there is like it's so well put together. And honest to God, if Thanos just turned out to be another run-of-the-mill supervillain, we get so much with these films. This movie would have caved in on itself, because this movie, in my opinion, lived and died on how well they did Thanos.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely.
What I like about Thanos, and I said this on another podcast, and I wish Red were here, because then he probably confirmed this or not. He reminded me of a Star Wars character by the name of Emperor Vitiate, who was like the Sith Lord, and his goal was to kill everybody. But what I said he reminded me of him is because, at the end of the day, he wants to kill everybody, just so he can kind of just live his own life and just be a farmer, be a poet. Just sort of like, everyone's dead except for me, now I'm just going to relax in this, like, little farm, grow some crops. I had my big genocidal moment, now I'm all good. So that was the impression I got away, especially for the ending. Connor, you've been quiet. What are your thoughts on Thanos?
So in terms of Thanos not being like the comics, I'm going to give a resounding who cares.
Exactly.
Yeah. Apologies
Because,
for anybody who likes the comic version of Thanos.
I won't give any apologies. so my thinking is basically this. All right, is Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins anything like in the comics? No. Is the Joker? Is Bane from Dark Knight Rises anything like his comic book counterpart? No. Is Zemo anything like his comic book counterpart? No. Here's the thing, though. As far as I'm concerned, they're all good villains because they were conceived as a part of a story, which is not a comic book story. This is just the nature of adaptation, all right? And on top of that, movies are like the comics, but guess what? Comics aren't even like the comics. What version of a comic book character are you even adapting? And so
exactly.
And so when it comes to like people who are going to be like, well, it's not Thanos. It's like, well, who cares? All right, it is Thanos. It's the movie version of Thanos. Get over yourself. So. Yeah. I'm sorry if that's mean. I'm sorry if that's maybe condescending, but I heard that complaint too many times to care. So when it comes to this version of Thanos, he's an interesting character. I think because I was listening to several reviews, and what's interesting about this kind of take is that it's almost like a parody of a damaged hero, like the damaged hero's journey's wow, I'm
Somebody compared him to a
completely
God of War character.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, you guys were talking about the problematic elements of him sacrificing Gamora. I don't honestly see it that way, because you guys are talking about like the universe and like maybe some form of sentience. The fact of the matter is, Thanos feels what he does is right, and everything that he is given or that he does is all based on feelings. Love, whether you see it as ethical or not, is a feeling. And he felt love for Gamora, and so he sacrificed her, and so he, on his vision quest, was rewarded, and it is sick, and it is twisted, and it's treated like this big dramatic moment, but I can't help but feel like there's an element of parody there. And so it's not funny parody, or satire, rather. It's not funny satire, but it's still satire. And I think that when it comes to his overarching things, like, yeah, it's his plan. Like, you could like make the universe twice as big or make twice as many resources, but he's a psychopath. Like there's a part of him that relishes death and does love death in this version. That's why he does want to kill half of it, and it's his burden to bear, and that's why he's doing what he's doing, is because he likes this to some degree.
And that's why I'm upset that they removed the fun isn't something one considers line from the final cut of the film, because I think that would have really rounded out his motivations for this, because like, yes, his motivation is understandable, but he is sort of two-dimensional in the fact that he wants to kill half of the population of the universe, and all that godhood and fatherhood stuff lies in there. But then he also has the other dimension of him loving Gamora. But that's pretty much it. And that one line from the trailer really got me hyped for him, and I'm disappointed that they got rid of it.
Well, I'm with you there. I wish that line would have been in the trailer. And the thing, though, that I don't really like about, you are right, the why now question is very evident in this movie, and it's never brought up. And also, because like when you look back at like these movies, even leading up to very recently, it's almost like Thanos is a person people know about, and they know what he wants, and what he wants are the Infinity Stones. And then it's like he just woke up one morning and is like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And he did that 3 years ago. He still did nothing.
Yep.
So it's just kind of funny. And when it comes to, like, I really hope we get like a Marvel one-shot. Hey, remember those? Where it is him taking over Xandar and getting Power Stone. That'd be fun. But when it comes to the whole plan of I want to kill half of the universe, that maybe it's because I do know the comics, and maybe this isn't an objective enough criticism, so I apologize for this. But it does feel like, what did Thanos do in the comics? Oh, he killed half the universe. Let's make his whole plan killing literally half of the universe split down the middle. And it's sort of like, okay, I know I've never read a Thanos comic, and even the layman like me knows he killed half the universe. I don't know why he killed half the universe. Maybe it was just an arbitrary, bam, I killed half, you're all done. But this one is like, no, it needs to be half, the balance, the precision. It's like, okay, you know of Thanos too. Okay. But that's all I really have to say about the character. You guys talk.
Sorry.
Thanks, Joel. I was just going to say that it is kind of confusing when you break down his motivation, because Loki tells him in the beginning he's not going to become a god. But once he gets the 6 Infinity Stones, he does become a god. And at that point, there's no point in killing off half the universe, because can't you just make all the resources in space limitless? And like that kind of logic applied to it really breaks down his plan. That's why he's an antagonist, because he really hasn't like thought this through. Because if you're trying to solve the problem of overpopulation, the solution isn't genocide, and the character says that in the film. The solution is, to change other things. And with the 6 Infinity Stones, you can do that, and he chooses not to.
Maybe fans. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end, after he snaps his fingers, and you see like him after he's done it, is it supposed to be implied that the Infinity Gauntlet is broken now?
It's like burnt or the stones aren't broken, and that's important because that means that they're still usable. The Avengers might have to like fix the gauntlet or get a new gauntlet or use the proto gauntlet that was in the Forge. But it looks like, because this happens in the comics, where like the strain of using all 6 on that large of a scale can like break the stones, and I think that they're just doing it with the gauntlet, so the Avengers still have a way to undo some of what Thanos did.
Okay, I think Nate was trying to say. Nate, what did you want to say?
I'm just kind of hoping they don't bring in Adam. I just hope they don't make Adam Warlock. If they do bring in Adam Warlock, I'm just hoping he's not a Deus Ex Machina and just undermine some of Thanos' motivation a little.
I think they said that. I think they said he's not going to show up till Guardians 3.
Okay.
Okay. As for the destruction of the stones, yeah.
Because the Soul Stone is kind of a big thing for him. The Soul Stone's kind of like a big thing for him. But I will say, just real quick, because I forgot to mention it earlier, that I thought because I didn't see it until the second time I saw the film, is that they gave a little nod to Jim Starlin, the creator of Thanos, and I was like, oh, that's nice. They hardly ever do that these days.
Yeah.
In Marvel films.
I agree. Something I really like about Thanos as a villain, it's just in this film, is that he has such presence. Like, I was watching this film, and it reminded me of Wrath of Khan, where it's sort of like, even when you don't see Khan, you still feel his presence everywhere, and everything is about him. And I felt the same way with Thanos, like, just from the get-go, it's like, he has charisma and presence. You sort of like, everything that's going on is because of him, his generals, just him destroying Xandar, even though we don't get to see it, which I would have loved to see it. Just like, you could just feel like, when Bruce Banner comes flying down, it's like, Thanos is coming. Like, I can just feel this guy's presence. Like, Thanos is here, and he's ready to, wreck some stuff. He got his, he about to give the universe a good whooping.
Essentially.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna have a joke of, this movie is essentially Thanos taking his dick out and beating the Marvel Universe with it.
Yeah, pretty much. And that is your dick joke for the podcast people. That's that part of the crossover. But yeah.
Well, I mean, Peter makes a dick joke when he calls his chin a ball sack.
Yeah, that's true. So we're checking off all the important parts. Connor, how about you take? Oh, no, Jake. Sorry.
No, you ask Connor. Your
question.
Connor. I've talked too much.
No, Connor, how about you take us somewhere? What's something about the movie you found either really interesting or really bad?
Okay, so update. Laundry number 2 has been started. Just as a heads up. So when it comes to this movie, let me think. I think we've talked about Thanos. We kind of talked about more of the cosmic broad stuff. Let's talk specific. So we do a thing in this movie where we do have a lot of subplots. And the Guardians never go to Earth. Doctor Strange never meets Captain America. It's very segmented in a way that I was honestly kind of surprised by.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the overall structure of this?
I was really surprised by it, but I really liked it. It kind of reminded me of Empire Strikes Back, the way the characters are mostly separated throughout the majority of it, and they each have their own thing going on. Yeah. I like that. I also like the fact that we really do feel the scale of the Marvel Universe. You've got some people on Earth, you've got some people in space, you've got some people on Titan. You've got these people all in these different places, and you really feel the scope of this story. And I like that. The fact that it's so segmented means we don't have to have like moments where you have multiple subplots like bulging in on each other during it. The fact that we have certain characters and certain groups mean we can focus on certain subplots at certain times, so you don't have a bunch of subplots all jammed together in a single scene.
I liked it for the most part. I think they picked the right people for the right teams. I don't know if this was like because of the comics or because I'm kind of a bit of a I don't know much about that, but sort of like Iron Man and Doctor Strange, like that made a good team with Peter Parker and Peter Quill and the Guardians. I have to say 2 Peters now. I do agree with whoever said Cap's team kind of felt a little underwhelming.
That was me.
Okay, I kind of agree with that. Like Cap's kind of just here on the ground, but I think it works because for Cap's character to be defending Earth while Iron Man's in space.
Well, I think their team was underwhelming in development, but not in their power, because they very easily defeat 2 of the Black Order, whereas Iron Man and Doctor Strange can like barely keep up. So I think that the point of those 2 scenes in the beginning is to show how coordinated Cap's team is, whereas how uncoordinated an uncoordinated team Tony's is.
Yeah.
Because that's
Makes
really
sense.
because that's the point of having Civil War in the timeline where we did. So the Avengers were fractured and broken up, as Tony says, when we pick up this film.
Something about the structure to what? No, sorry, Dipple. You go ahead.
I was actually going to bring up a real quick thing because I don't think we're going to talk about this long. Is that I know some people have been complaining about the Black Order and how little they're developed in that they are not. Where because the thing is like if you've read Infinity, then like Corvus Glaive, he's the real leader of the Black Order, and they're really more like in here they're just mini bosses. But on the other hand, I'm cool with this because this is supposed to be Thanos' movie.
Yeah.
And but the one thing I would have liked more is to seen like Corvus as the leader instead of what it looked like to be Ebony Maw.
So,
and I really liked Ebony Maw.
Yeah, Ebony Maw, I kind of felt like he's kind of like a preacher a little bit. Every time they have it, like he's walking around like, rejoice as the children of Thanos, you'll be spared your lives or whatever.
He's a Jehovah's Witness.
No, actually,
do you have any moment?
He's heard me just saying, take me to church.
He reminded me of Wei Yun from Star Trek DS9 a little bit. That's sort of the vibes I was getting at.
Trying to say something, Connor?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, does your entire planet have the moment to talk about your Lord and Savior Thanos? So the thing about the Black Order, so I've read Infinity. I've not read a whole lot of Marvel stuff, but I've read Jonathan Hickman's Avengers run. And Infinity's a really cool event. So the thing is, when it comes to like the Black Order, I think the reason Squidward is the leader is because he's probably. I know there are like objectively funnier jokes and more clever jokes. That's my favorite joke. So,
yeah, me too.
So when it comes to Ebony Maw, I think he's just an easier character to animate with an actor. Because Corvus Glaive has a unique anatomy. He's got a robe and he's got like a different kind of facial features. So I think that's probably why they did the switcheroo on that one. But that being said, has anyone actually now the people complaining about the Black Order not being fully developed and whatnot? It's like, well, obviously you only said you read Infinity and didn't actually read Infinity because the Black Order isn't exactly like War and Peace. You know what I mean?
I've read Infinity, and they're just there. They're just there to be hype men for Thanos. Yeah,
so
they're like his posse, more or less.
Exactly.
That's exactly what they are. The one thing I would have liked to seen a little more is like Corvus's like scheming, but he's kind of like because he's like the Starscream of the group.
Exactly. So, but when it comes to the Black Order, I think in terms of this movie, they're utilized very well. Like they actually get kind of moments that I didn't expect them to. Like Proxima Midnight's really cool, and I like that like they don't actually say these names. I only know these names because I read the comic. But like she has the best death in the whole movie. They send her up into a buzzsaw.
I was so sad by Ebony Maw's death. I'm like, oh come on.
Well, it's kind of funny because, like, when Proxima faced off against Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, and Okoye, there were people cheering in my theater, the first time I saw it, because it was like,
really?
Oh, shit, it's all three of the female heroes together. And I'm like, yeah, but if we had if I had Gamora here, it'd be fine, but all right, whatever.
Yeah.
So, Connor, to jump back to your question about the structure, because I think that's a really important thing. So I saw this with my family, and they all indicated that the sort of rapid fire switching between all of the characters in all of the acts was really jarring to them. Because for casual audience members, people aren't like the casual audience members aren't there for Thanos. They're there for the Avengers. So I think that we talked about how this is ambitious and how it could potentially fall into a risk. The risk here is not only Thanos not working, but people not getting that this is Thanos' movie. And so when I left the theater for the first time, I was really disappointed that we didn't get more Avengers. But after reminding myself pretty constantly over the past week that this is Thanos' movie and we weren't supposed to see the Avengers win, I'm a lot more okay with that now. But I felt like with the marketing and within the film itself, they didn't make it clear enough that like this is Thanos' movie, even though we spent a lot of time with them. So I think that leaving the Avengers in the fractured place that Civil War did, was a good choice for that film, and I mean, I like that choice, and I think it worked in this film. But for casual audience members, I can see how this movie can fall apart very easily because they're not seeing a lot of Iron Man, they're not seeing a lot of Captain America, they're not seeing a lot of Spider-Man. Even though these characters all had really big moments, these characters weren't, really developed. But I think that development for the Avengers is going to come in the next film because most of the OG Avengers are left with that.
I would actually. I just gotta say, Jake, I have a bit of devil's advocacy in terms of the structure. And again, I feel like I sometimes feel like I'm making excuses for the movie when there might not be. But I feel like this again. It goes back to that whole the movie is not a film, not even a TV series. I feel like the movie almost wanted to structure itself like a comic book event. Like it's not your 3-act structure. It is, and I don't read comic book events, so I don't really know how they're structured. But from what everyone tells me, that this is very much how a comic book event is structured. And in some ways, this movie's risk is that it's trying to tell people this is what it's like for comic book fans. This is what you guys go through every day with the comic book event.
With that point, me and my brother, I sat down with my brother and I was explaining how this would have worked as an issue and which side quests were going to be the tie-in miniseries. The end of issue 2 would be, the free comic book day 0-issue prelude would be the opening scene, and then when you get the opening sequence is going to be issue number 1. At the end of issue 2, Thor goes, "All right, I'm going to go make a giant weapon," and then at the end of issue 5, which would be the penultimate issue, he would show up in Wakanda with an awesome weapon, and it would say, "How did Thor get this awesome space weapon? Be sure to read Thor: The Space Forge numbers 1 through 3 to find out." And then it's "How did Thanos get the Soul Gem? Read Thanos Soul Quest numbers 1 through 2, and so it'd be that sort of thing. And so that's that part where he shows up with God, Stormbreaker is so cool. So when he shows up with Stormbreaker, that is a 2-page spread with an editor's note in the corner. That's what that is.
I like the structure of this, but again, casual audience members just aren't going to get that, and so that's where I think the risk of this movie is.
That I think general audience members have gotten more accustomed to that kind of structuring.
Have they? Because if this is the most ambitious crossover event in history, and if this movie is unique and unlike any other film, how exactly would they have gotten used to that?
Well, I mean, we've seen this type of structuring in other blockbusters before. I would argue that Last Jedi had this kind of structuring as well, to a degree.
I don't know. It had a pretty decent 3-act.
I don't know about that.
I mean, it cut to different locations. We would cut to Ochto, then to Canto Bight, then back to the Raddus, and so on and so forth. And it does eventually culminate on Kratos, as this movie eventually culminates in Wakanda. And I mean, not exactly.
The core cast of The Last Jedi is 6 characters, whereas the cast of this film is 24.
Yeah, I agree.
So because casual audience members are here for the Avengers and the Guardians, it's really difficult for them to keep up with everything and get a beat on everything and feel satisfied with the little time that we get with each character.
I think Nate was trying to sum some though. But Nate, do you want to say something first?
No,
pretty much.
Before you start, Joel, I just wanted to say, I think everybody went into this movie expecting a ton of characters to be in it, I think everyone expected this to be about 24 different heroes at different times. And I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying we've seen this exact type of structuring before, but I think we've had enough like it where people won't be too off-put by it. I mean, I wasn't, but I'm not a general audience member. I mean, what is a general audience member, really?
Well, I was talking actually earlier today with a woman, and I was kind of chatting with her, and she was mentioning that she was going to take a group of kids to go watch this movie, and then she said, "Wait, which ones do I need to watch?" Because I had mentioned the Guardians of the Galaxy. She said, I haven't seen those movies because she started having kids around the time that Guardians of the Galaxy came out. So she couldn't see those movies. And so I said, well, the second one's on Netflix. And she saw Thor Ragnarok. And I'm like, okay, you've seen those. So it's I almost had to kind of talk her through kind of the checklist. She's kind of familiar with them tangentially. But to Jake's point, I don't consider general audiences as much as I think maybe I should. I don't read into marketing, but a lot of people do because that's how you sell a movie. And I do think, though, that watching this, I was sort of getting a sense of like, oh man, there's a person kind of walking in who only saw like the first two Avengers movies. They didn't see Civil War because it said Captain America, not Avengers on it. They'll probably be lost. And so when it comes to like this movie, I was watching it thinking, maybe next, like this is good, but maybe next time we shouldn't put like every single character into this movie, because like when I'm watching this, I could kind of see the scale.
Well, I mean,
bending.
Ant-Man wasn't here, but
that's true. But I mean, yeah. He was there. He was just really small. So when it comes to like this movie, like I could see the at capacity limit. I could see like the scale like almost breaking. It didn't quite break. It didn't exceed its capacity, but like one more character, one more location, one more little subplot, like it could all come crumbling down. It didn't, and it's miraculous that it didn't. But I could start to see the cracks in the armor in this movie at times.
Anyway, Joel, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, I definitely think that, much like comics themselves in certain areas, there is a balance, because I'm not someone who entirely believes the old Stan Lee line of everybody's comic is their first. I definitely think you got to have some continuity, some sort of change of the status quo that generally, although, comics, they're rebooting every 5 seconds, it seems like, but regardless, like, you got to build off of that, but I also think there's a balance between, reading it and reading a comic that's pretty easy to get into, and then reading like this big event and getting completely lost. And I think it's like whether or not it's more of a question of whether you should do that or just try to find a good balance here.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you're recommending comic books for someone to read as they're getting into comics, you're not going to recommend
Grant Morrison stuff.
DC Metal. Like you're going to recommend like All-Star Superman or one of Mark Waid's Captain America runs or Matt Fraction. Like you're not going to recommend to them to start with an event, because an event is the culmination of things. And to Connor's point, I have coworkers who have seen some of these movies sporadically and have, had generally like positive views on them. And they've, expressed concern about going to see Infinity War because like one of my new supervisors was like, well, and everyone's been telling me I need to go see Black Panther before I go see Infinity War. And he's like, I don't know if I can just commit that much time to it. And as far as Doc's point as to what a casual audience member is, a casual audience member is someone who doesn't read the source material and just goes to see the movies. And so that's pretty much everyone in my family, probably a lot of people in everyone's families. And so like my mom was probably the most vocal about her disappointment with this movie. But to be fair, she's like fallen asleep during Civil War. So she hasn't even seen like a lot of the stuff that would make this work. So I think that it is a big time commitment for casual audience members to see all of this stuff just to make everything in Infinity War work.
Yeah,
also,
sorry. My little brother hasn't seen all these movies. Like after we're gonna be finished recording here, we're gonna watch Iron Man 3, Thor 2, and Captain America 2, and then Thor 3 because like he doesn't like he's a lot like me except he doesn't like superheroes. He just doesn't care, and like that's weird to me that my little brother of all people isn't into superheroes. And I was like, hey Levi, this was a few months back. I said, do you want to watch through all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies before Infinity War? And he went, no. And then this movie came out. I was like, everyone's talking about it. I want to watch these movies now. And so it is a thing where it's like, and to Jake's point, it is a matter of like, it's not even just that they don't read the source material and they just watch the movies. It's like they only watch the movies they think look good. They probably haven't seen Ant-Man. And it's like, and so.
And to be fair, I don't think you need to for this movie.
Oh, Nate, you want to say
true.
something?
Well, I've been trying to say something a while ago, but I kept getting interrupted. But my point on this topic, last year I took my brother to go see Guardians Volume 2, and he's never seen the first one. He understood what was going on, pretty much.
Okay. Deadpool, you've been quiet. You have anything to add on this?
Not really. You guys have been covering this subject a lot better than I could, really. That's why I've been kind of kept silent, because there's nothing really I can add in this department.
Okay. I definitely have a very
what side of the fence do you fall on?
I kind of fall on the fence of it should have felt a little more viewer accessible. I mean, because people like us have seen all 19 films now, but I know like people in my own family who's only seen like 2 at most. So if you went into this thinking that you could just go, oh, I saw one Avengers movie, I can do this, good fucking luck.
I will say, I'm glad I talked to you and Red that night before, because Red told me the spoiler for Iron Man 2 is like, not Iron Man 2, Thor 3, Thor the Dark World. Not Thor the Dark World, Thor Ragnarok. Dang it, I'm mixing everything up today.
Ragnarok.
Yeah, and so it's like, I didn't know the Asgard, I don't want to, the Asgardians were refugees, so it's sort of like, okay, I know that now. And then because of that, I went in understanding at least the beginning enough to like, okay, the Asgardians are refugees. That's why they are where they are. So it's sort of like, okay, I got it.
It's also really depressing when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because,
Thor Ragnarok is a really sad movie now.
yeah, it's kind of a really.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we had Valkyrie, I guess, is dead.
No, she's not.
They said she and the rest of her group, Korg and everyone, escaped in escape pods.
The Russo said that Valkyrie, Korg, and about half of the Asgardians did escape. But can we talk about Thor in this film? Because I love Thor. This is probably the best Thor has ever been written.
Yeah,
He's so awesome.
Yeah.
And it's kind of depressing that it's an Avenger. It's not one of his movies where he's the best written.
Yep,
I
exactly.
think it was pretty well written in Thor Ragnarok, but yeah, I thought
That's funny.
Yeah.
I thought he was well written in Ragnarok. I'm one of those people that.
Yeah, but he's
Ragnarok
better here.
I will say
Yeah,
that my
but-
favorite. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that my favorite scene with Thor is when he's talking to Rocket, and he's
Same.
telling him about my brother is dead. My best friend got impaled. My dad died. My whole world's gone, and my mom died. She was killed by a dark elf. Yeah, so, and you can tell like as he's trying to like buck himself up and hype himself up. It's more like he's trying to do it not to like have a mental breakdown.
Oh yeah, that was a good scene.
Yeah, he's pretty much a Marvel character at this point after all the shit that's gone on with him. Like,
And that
lost
was
his
like,
family, lost his home, his people.
yeah,
Chris Hemsworth's performance in that scene was really good because, like you said, he's like trying to tell himself to hold it together, even though clearly he's having a mental breakdown. And I think it's so fascinating that Rocket was the one he opened up to, and not like Gamora or Star-Lord. And I think that makes Rocket a lot more of an interesting character. Is like he's the one that Thor went to, and I'm really glad that Rocket is like one of the only Guardians left at the end of the film, moving things forward because he has that connection with Thor now.
Yeah. I also like. There's another moment that's similar to that Thor moment with Tony, where after Thanos like throws the moon at them, Tony just flies in. He's like, "If you throw another moon at me, we're gonna have it's played up like a joke, but you can tell from Stark's voice, it's like, oh no, he's doing everything in his power not to like freak out right now.
Yeah.
Definitely. For me, oh sorry, Connor, go ahead.
I was going to say to that point, Robert Downey Jr. does a lot of good acting in this. Like, there's a part where, what's his face? Mark Ruffalo is like, yo, this is what Thanos does. He kills people. He's behind Loki. And then Robert Downey Jr., you can just see in his face, like, he goes, oh no. And he kind of walks over and starts stretching. He's like, oh, he's having an anxiety. Like, no, he's having an anxiety attack. And he's diffusing all of his like anxiety with comedy. He's like, I swore off Ben and Jerry's, and then he gets slapped by the cape, and it's funny.
Well, because that's what he learned from Iron Man 3.
And then and then it's also tied back with his one vision that Scarlet Witch gave him in Agent of Ultron.
That was great. My favorite line, I think that Tony, my favorite line from Iron Man is when he's talking to Doctor Strange about Thanos, and I forget how exactly it goes, but like, this dude should have been in my head for 10 years. I think he said 10 years. He really has.
6 years. He said 6 years.
Oh, 6 years. Okay, this dude's been in my head for 6 years, and like, yeah, that's been Tony's arc. He's just been like, he's been freaking out about this day. It's like, it's finally here. It's finally come. And again, I guess that is undermined a bit by the why now problem, but in terms of just Tony himself, that's a really good line. Sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jake.
So now that we're talking about Tony, he's great in this, and we can talk about his relationship with Peter, but it's really interesting that he's the only character that Thanos doesn't refer to as my child, because really, like, Thanos treats him like as an equal, as burdened with wisdom or cursed with wisdom. I think that's the line. And so I think that all of that stuff with with like paralleling Thanos and Tony was really great and really strong, considering that Robert Downey Jr. has been the backbone of this film franchise for 10 years. And I'm sure we'll get to predictions for Avengers 4 later, but a lot of those parallels lead me to believe that Tony is going to be the one to wield the Infinity Gauntlet, given like everything that, you know, happened with Thanos, and Tony remarking in the beginning in the film that he's been in my head for 6 years, and Thanos telling Tony that Tony, sorry, too many T sounds and TH sounds back to back. And Thanos telling Tony that he knows about him and that he's familiar with what he's doing. So I think all of that stuff was really great and set some really neat stuff up to happen in the future.
Oh yeah.
I'd also like to just throw this out here, because I just thought of this to bring up that point, is that a lot of people give Tony shit in the film for like, maybe we should not, maybe we should wait for everybody else or go back and get people, then go to Titan. I'm like, Tony doesn't think things through when he's having kind of a mental breakdown. So that's that's in his wheelhouse of him bullhorning going to Titan with just a wizard and a kid with spider powers.
Well, the kid with spider powers is a stowaway too. I thought that was a really cool way of incorporating the Iron Spider suit, because like the big moment at the end of Homecoming is that Peter rejects it, and I think it's kind of neat that that suit and this responsibility is thrust at him, and he has to take it on himself. You know, it isn't a choice to put it on; it's just thrust at him. I think that's cool.
And then he ends up dying because of it.
Well, Nate, do you want to add anything?
Kinda, yeah.
Do you want to add anything? You are our Spider-Man person of the day. You are.
Oh, this, yeah. Okay, so I made it clear I am not a fan of Homecoming at all. Like how they treat Peter and just everything about here. I kind of felt like I feel like the people, the Russos and their writers, they really know how to handle Peter Parker as a character. Even if I'm still not a fan of the whole, I want to be an apprentice to Tony Stark, yay. But no, here I actually really cared about him. Some of his jokes I thought were funny, and even if he'll probably come back, I felt something at that ending.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Yeah.
That death was like, that's when it freaked me out. That death, like, literally freaked me out. Like, this is like how I would probably feel if I were doing this. Like, he's just a kid. He's not even a grown-up. He hasn't experienced life, and like, I don't want to go, Mr. Stark.
When he was apparently improvised by him.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Wow.
So the thing that's great about it, he keeps calling him Sir and Mr. Stark, and it's like, oh man, it gets you. I don't know why those specific things. It's like he still has this respect and admiration even when he's going. It's like he's still a child, and it is heartbreaking.
I know people get
like pop culture reference.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that I like the whole thing of him. I lost my train of thought. Shit. Basically, I was just gonna say about Peter, like the whole relationship between him and Tony especially, like that moment where he does not say anything after Peter like fades away in his arms. He's like, Tony has this look of, that is my ultimate failure right there.
Because he has that line in Homecoming after the ferry scene where he says, and I feel like if you die, then I feel like that's on me. And every scene Peter and Tony have in this film is great, because Tony starts off this film saying, at this point in his life, at this point in his career as Iron Man, he wants a kid. And everything Peter and Tony want from each other is just to build that father-son relationship. And I really love that really little tiny detail on Ebony Maw's ship when they're going to Titan, when Maw is torturing Doctor Strange and he has him with all those like weird spike things, and Peter and Tony are just up there casually, and Tony's like, all right, kid, like how are we going to do this? Like he's passing on, like he's trying to get him to think about this stuff and formulate a plan. And I love that that back and forth between the two characters.
Do you? I'd just like to add, this might be for speculation, but do you think Pepper actually does secretly have a baby, or is that just like something they just were talking about for the arc?
No.
Sake? Okay.
I think this the Avengers 4 is going to end with a superhero wedding. Tony's going to get married to Pepper, and that's going to be our way of saying goodbye to Tony Stark. Maybe a funeral for another person, but that's how I think it's going to end. I think that because Thanos is the embodiment of his anxiety and his fears, he will slay the dragon. If this is like some kind of myth, he's going to slay Thanos, and then he will return home, and he will marry Pepper, and then maybe the post-credit scene is he'll have a baby, and he'll be like, oh, you'll hear the crying, and he'll be like rubbing his temple. He's like, why did I do this? And it'll be funny, but I don't know, maybe
kid Arno. I'm just saying, Arno.
maybe in 20 years, people like Marvel will kind of decrease as a brand, and Robert Downey Jr. is going to go down in popularity, and then we're all going to feel nostalgic for the heyday of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then they're going to be like, Iron Man 4 is happening, people, and then we're going to get more of it. But I think for right now, this is how we're going to end things and say goodbye to him.
I definitely agree. Another reaction I liked near the ending, just talking about the ending, because, it's the ending, I just like Captain America's as well, just that sort of, oh god, like, he realizes something really bad has happened, and I honestly feel like Captain America as well, just sort of like, oh god.
Well, to be fair, he lost Bucky.
That's true, he lost Bucky.
Well, importantly, Tony loses Peter, and Cap loses both Bucky and Falcon. Cap loses both people who we predicted are going to, one of them is going to become Captain America. Captain America is going to die. No, Cap and Tony are both left alive, and they lose, like, the most important people in their lives, with the exclusion of Pepper for Tony. And I think that's
Rhodes.
a really interesting place. And Rhodes. So I think that loss is something that's going to unify the characters in the next film.
I do love that.
I feel...
Oh, sorry, Nate, go ahead.
I kind of feel, in terms of losses, I kind of feel awful for Falcon, because nobody noticed his, and Rhodey's just like, hey, Sam, where are you?
Yeah, what was I going to say? Shoot, I lost my train of thought now, too.
I think another character we should probably talk about is Star-Lord, because I think he has a really interesting arc in this with the rest of the Guardians. I really like how I really love the scene where they first meet Thor, and he's kind of jealous of him, and he's like trying to like one up him and stuff.
It's really funny. I think it's funny. All the Guardians have a crush on Thor. This is not a dude. This is a man.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Like a pirate had a baby with an angel.
That was good.
So my thinking quickly, I'm sorry, this is going to be a quick tangent regarding Thor, but it is related to the Guardians. So he gets an eye back, and that kind of makes me think, why did he lose an eye? Is this a situation where
That's
didn't want to wear an eye patch? I think that in terms of like him gaining experience, and like he then gets something as a prize for learning something with the Guardians, I think Groot's arm being the handle of Stormbreaker is a much better signifier of that than gaining more perspective by getting an eye from Rocket. But I think if he's going to get an eye, I'm glad it was from Rocket. But that being said, I do prefer the handle.
As long as in Avengers 4, Rocket gets Bucky's arm and his gun.
You could argue they kind of pulled the eye out of their ass.
That's good.
So
good.
while we're on the point of Star-Lord, his arc in this is very similar to a couple other characters. And the one moment that I felt like was really, really bad with him was when he started punching out Thanos when they almost had the glove off. But I think that ties
actually
into what I was just like, dude, you just blew away the hope for the entire universe to succeed. But I think that ties into Doctor Strange and Tony's plan. So importantly, there are a couple of like key moments and relationships that happen in this film about characters like having a hard time sacrificing, because the way this movie portrays sacrificing yourself is almost looked at as like the easy choice to make, whereas sacrificing like the most important person in your life, the thing you love most, is the hard choice. And one of the themes of this movie is how difficult it is for people, even the quote-unquote best of us in the form of the Avengers, have a hard time doing that. because if Loki sacrificed Thor, then Thanos wouldn't have gotten the Space Stone. If Gamora had sacrificed Nebula, then Thanos wouldn't have gotten the Soul Stone. If Cap had let Vision sacrifice himself, then Thanos wouldn't have gotten the Mind Stone. If Strange would have sacrificed Stark, he wouldn't have had to give up the Time Stone. And then if Peter had sacrificed Gamora, that would be another thing that would have stopped him from getting the Soul Stone.
Well,
but
he
then
almost
at the end of the
sacrificed
film,
him, but Thanos stops him.
right? But then at the end of the film, Wanda is the only character who isn't Thanos who makes that hard choice. But at that point, it's too late. And so I think moving forward, the reason why the rest of the OG Avengers are left is because they're going to have to learn that they have to sacrifice in order to use the Soul Stone, the Infinity Gauntlet, and bring everyone else back. Which is why the sentiment from Captain America saying we don't trade lives in this film is really important and a really great way to foreshadow what I think is going to happen in the next film.
Something about Peter Quill for a second. I'd say Quill, because if I don't say Peter, I'm going to be confused and think of which Peter again?
Let's just say Star-Lord, just saying.
Just Star-Lord.
Star-Lord, Spidey, whatever.
Yeah, Star-Lord is, I think it does work within his character to freak out when he found out about Gamora, because Star-Lord does not handle death well at all. He's one of those...
Yeah, I mean, look at... Yeah, Ego, and then he just shot the crap out of Ego when he found out the tumor.
When he
And then Yondu, his weird father figure died in front of his face. Yeah. The other thing is that he's not a logical person, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's all fair. Sorry, go ahead, Connor.
I'm sorry. One thing that I like about I'm going to go back to Thor in relation to the Guardians. One thing I really like about Thor in relation to what Star-Lord says in the first Guardians movie is that he's a loser, right? Thor's a loser. He's lost stuff, and that's kind of what makes him a great bridge to the Avengers. To the Guardians. And you could say the same thing for Robert Downey Jr. Same thing for Iron Man, and same thing for all these characters. But I think Thor's lost stuff on a very mythic, epic scale, and in mythic, epic Shakespearean ways, similar to the Guardians. So I think that's a really nice pairing in a lot of different ways, especially with Star-Lord. But going back to him finding out about Gamora, man, that pissed me off a little bit.
Me too.
So the reason I have an issue with this is this felt a lot to me like the Russos kind of playing on their greatest hits of remember that really dramatic part where Iron Man found out the most inconvenient time that Bucky killed his parents, and it's this heartbreaking oh no, it's really dramatic, and you're totally understanding why he's doing what he's doing, and it's just you're playing right into the villain's hands. This sort of felt like that, except for the timing felt sort of contrived to me in a way that it didn't feel in Civil War, where it felt
I disagree. But...
Well, it felt like now you might people who I've talked to have said, Connor, you've never been in love, and you know what? You're right, but it still doesn't make sense to me. So
at least you're honest about it.
Yeah. So when it comes to this though, is it's oh my God, we just fought Thanos. We fought the Law, and the Law hasn't won yet, and we are going to take him down. And we got this thing. Everybody and their mother is just trying to pull this glove off of his hand, except for Star-Lord. And what's he doing? Instead of waiting 5 seconds to get it off his hand, he's going to go, wait, where's Gamora? Where is she? Where is she? It's what are you doing?
But dude,
I'm sorry.
I get where you're coming from, but you have to admit, Chris Pratt's performance in that scene was fucking great.
Yeah. That's the thing. Chris Pratt sells a lot of it. I think he actually rises to the front in terms of performance, and that should just show you just how crazy of a screen presence this guy is. His performance is good, but I think in terms of a screenwriting level, it felt contrived to me in a way that same moment from Civil War didn't. Because, buddy, I'm not kidding. You couldn't have waited 5 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. But I think I was really mad when that happened, but the reason why I said I think that's serviceable at best is because Strange and Doctor Strange is trying to play the long game. Because
good, you brought that up. That was my next thing.
The one situation, the one timeline out of the 14 billion whatever that he looked at where the Avengers win, I took that as we can't stop Thanos from collecting all the gems. So what we're going to do is we're going to give him all the gems so he can use it. And even though I have to sacrifice myself and along with half the life in the universe, we're doing this so all the gems are collected and in one place. So then the Avengers and whoever is left can use the gem to all 6 Infinity Stones to win the war instead of winning the battle.
Right, and I definitely think there might be time travel involved from what I've heard in terms. But oh, sorry.
But to that point, like I see where you're coming from, but my read on this movie, my interpretation, because we don't have all the pieces, where I think this is going is the thing Doctor Strange saw was that he's like, okay, I saw a glimpse of the future, and I need to ensure that Robert Downey Jr. is alive. That's the thing that needs to happen because that's because if that's not the case, then why bother fighting? Like, why bother going through all those motions if it was just going to result in him giving him the time stone? Why doesn't, when Thanos show up, he just give him the time stone and then he would leave at that point? Because what I'm thinking is happening, he's like, okay, let's just fight. And then when he sees Robert Downey Jr. get impaled, he goes, oh, crap, I need to ensure that he's alive. Here, take the time stone. I need to make. Then that's when he says, "You need to make sure he stays alive." So I think when he does the snapping, as it's been called, which I think is one of the greatest things that's ever been coined, when the snapping occurs, I think that because Thanos does appear to be a man of honor in this movie, what happens is that Robert Downey Jr.'s odds are weighted, and that his life was insured during the plague, so to speak, and so. That's what I'm kind of reading it as, because of the deal Doctor Strange made to ensure that he. That's my read anyway.
No, I read it too. I would go even further. Maybe he thought. Sorry about that. Ice is being made in the background. That Doctor Strange wants, not just Iron Man, but the OG or the original Avengers to be alive as well. I don't know. Well, Thanos didn't make a promise to keep the original Avengers alive. That just happened by coincidence. They died based on their convenience to the next movie. But I definitely think he needs all of them for whatever is going to happen next, whether it be time travel or something else.
You know what, though? It's really cool, though, that they have really developed and broadened this universe to the point where the original Avengers team not being dead doesn't feel contrived to me. That's insane. Like, to me, that feels insane, where it's like, oh, because my response isn't, oh, well, isn't it convenient that they're alive? My response is, oh, my God, the Avengers are still alive. Okay, they can do it. That's crazy to me. Like, if you would have asked me 4 years ago, I would have said I sounded crazy.
That's just that's sort of the beauty of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It sort of transcended itself in a lot of ways. It feels like a universe, and it's like the rules are so set up for the most part. There's some, contrivances here and there, but for the most part, I think the rules are so set up that you can believe that the original Avengers are still alive. You can believe there are 6 Infinity Stones out there, and a snap of the fingers can destroy half the universe. So yeah, that just goes back to the whole crossover thing. Unless anyone has to say about this topic, I think another good one would be, how do you think all the tones mesh? Like, just from Thor's Game of Thrones-y kind of medieval galacticness to the Guardians' more goofy cosmic silliness.
I really liked it. Again, to kind of add to the novelty of this being a crossover, I like seeing these different aspects of the again, this really feels like a universe where not every place feels the same, or not everyone acts the same. Like, the Guardians are very much in character with how they are in James Gunn's movies, and Thor's very much in character with how he was in Ragnarok, and Tony and Cap are very much in character with how they've been for the past 10 years. I felt, even though I don't know if was it James Gunn himself just writing the Guardians movies?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and this
it's
one
James
was
Gunn with someone else. At least the first one was with someone else.
Yeah, and this movie is written by the people who did Civil War, and this is their first time writing the Guardians as characters, and I thought they did a really good job of recapturing who they are in those movies.
Well, to be fair, James Gunn did write some of the Guardians stuff.
Oh, he did?
This movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I think they did a good job of keeping the consistency with them.
Connor, but do you want to talk about the tone, just how they meshed into a nice soup instead of a big muddy mess?
No, I agree. This is very tonally well balanced. This has, like, I feel like this movie in and of itself has its own feel and its own tone and atmosphere, but at the same time, it's able to shift focus and feel like different parts of the universe at the same time. That's incredible. That's what that is.
Something about it I really admired is I might, and you guys feel free to disagree with me. I felt this was the darkest Marvel movie I've ever seen, especially how it starts. Just a refugee ship attacked, and the refugees are killed.
I don't know. Have you guys seen?
Yeah.
I don't know, guys. Have you guys seen Thor: The Dark World? I mean, the word "dark's" in the title. Come on.
The only dark thing about that movie was the theater.
But yeah, this is like the most.
And Kat Dennings' horrible humor.
That's true. But in all seriousness, this is probably the darkest Marvel film I've ever seen. Maybe. Especially just.
I mean, I think Civil War gets close to that, but yeah, this is pretty. And it's but what's interesting is it's also probably one of the funniest Marvel movies I've ever seen. Like, I laughed out loud a lot during this movie.
I
was actually glad for the humor. It's like, okay, I'm glad we have some humor because part of me watching this like
uppers, downers.
Yeah.
What's it like? Did you guys watch the Red Letter Media review where they're like, it's still a fun, jokey Marvel movie, but it's also doing dark and gritty better than DC?
Yeah, pretty much. Plus, the Tema villain actually had better build-up, unlike Steppenwolf.
Oh, definitely.
And better CG than Steppenwolf.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, well, you know what? I want. Speaking of DC villains, so you know how in Batman vs Superman, what's his name? Lex Luthor's like, I planned everything, like everything in this movie. It was my plan. Haha. Remember that? So I feel like in this movie, Thanos sort of does a similar thing, and I think it's actually a legitimate story problem with the movie, but it comes early enough in the movie to where it's not nearly as egregious as, say, Lex Luthor and Batman vs Superman. And that is the point where he's like, where Gamora shows up and he goes, "Mwahaha, I was counting on you showing up." Okay, let's backtrack. Okay, so at the beginning, he took. He found what he wanted and he blowed that sucker up, right?
Oh yeah.
Blow you up.
And
Boom.
killed Loki, and 1,000
Loki,
fangirls suddenly cried out in terror.
Yeah, like everyone's dead, and he left bodies floating out in ice of space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And SOS miraculously got out. Okay, the Guardians picked you up. Good, that's how you bring someone in. They miraculously found Thor. And Thor was miraculously still alive. And Thor informs them about Thanos and all this stuff. And then Gamora says, wait, we need to go nowhere to get an Infinity Stone. And then she shows up and he says, I counted on this. So you just knew that the Guardians, of all people, would pick up the thing, come there
That's
in
a good
time
point.
to find exactly Thor at the exact same point that he needs, that he can tell them about, that he remembered the Infinity Stones thing, and so Gamora would go there at the point in which he needed.
To be fair, the Guardians went to nowhere in their first movie, so I don't know if Thanos had like informants around that place or whatever.
No, that's fine. Them going to nowhere is fine. It's just how they were able to kind of jump through hoops to get that information, and Thanos counting on that is a little much for me.
Guys, I gotta go to my thing right now.
All right, so bye, Nate. Well, Nate's been taking
See you, Nathan.
Nate's just drifts off his molecular molecules.
Nathan doesn't feel so good.
I actually perfectly for him. Bye. I can see your point, Connor. Again, this is a testament to that movie where you're so emotionally driven that's like, oh, I kind of forget the logic of some of this stuff going on. And also, I think Thanos' plot, well, I definitely can see you being contrived. It's weird. It's one of those things where the contrivances don't bother me as much as they probably should, even if it is a legitimate problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at something like the whole, like, the order he gets the Infinity Stone, it's like, oh, wasn't it just miraculous that he got the Time Stone so he could also get the Mind Stone last? Like, you know, that's kind of how movies and stories work. I don't mind it quite there. It's the other stuff that does kind of bother me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Dipplezilla, you've been quiet. How about you lead us somewhere next?
I guess like just real quick and just a little thing I just thought of when we were talking about the effects a little earlier. Is it just me or did the effects for Banner in the Hulkbuster suit look a little wonky?
I thought it was fine.
I couldn't tell.
In the wide shots where it's just his face exposed, that was noticeable.
Okay, yeah, that a little bit, but that was only like 5 seconds. I guess.
There's also like similar aspects where like I'm remembering on Titan where Thanos hits some people with a beam, and it's like Drax and Mantis and I think some other people kind of getting hit with a beam at once, and it's like a flat shot. That didn't look like characters getting hit. That looked like a second unit and stuntmen getting hit by special effects. It was weird. The way like the and in certain things on Titan, like when we get that part from the trailer where what's his face goes like, oh yeah, your plan sucked, except my plan will be awesome. That whole exchange, like, and plus what I was just talking about, where the people get hit by a beam or something, it feels like the lighting on the characters is not the same, does not match what is in the green screen behind them. Now, it ain't Justice League. It's better than that, but like at the same time, when like a gust of smoke will come into the foreground, it really pops against what is in the green screen.
I don't know how many people, as everyone here saw, has everyone seen Black Panther in this podcast? So I can spoil something? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, it's definitely not those rhinos, I'll tell you that.
What are you talking about?
So I think that, in terms of special effects, this movie looks better than both Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok, if you ask me. Because when it comes to those movies, I felt like it's not just that I think the directors were kind of inexperienced with the scale of a production. I also felt like they probably weren't given the proper amount of time. But now after watching Infinity War, it's like, oh, were they allocating all of their top cropped resources to this movie instead of those ones?
I mean,
that's sort of where my mind was going. Yeah, no, I get why, but I think there are some special effects in Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok that are a little more than dicey.
They still look pretty damn good overall. You got it.
Oh yeah, they do. It's just I think it's noticeable when they do stick out on a regular
special
basis.
effect. Red Skull's makeup looks really good because I was talking to my friend Cole. He said that was a different actor, and I thought it was. What?
Oh, it is. He could have fooled me.
I know, like, I thought, like, oh, is he back? Like, is this the actual actor? Like, oh, wait, no, it's not. I just want to talk about that for a little bit, too. I love that cameo. That's probably, like, that was my jaw-drop moment when he came back. Because Captain America First Avenger is my favorite of the Marvel films in terms of just pure enjoyment for me.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I'm a...
It's my favorite. It's definitely my favorite of Phase 1. I am glad someone else likes that movie. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
As do I.
I understand the problem. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that when we find out Red Skull and we find out that it is Red Skull, I audibly said out loud, "Oh shit!" in the theater, and I've never done that with any movie I've ever seen. So
Nice.
I will give the movie that. The other thing is that while it's not the same actor, I thought it was. And the other thing is that you don't need to do anything else with Red Skull. You could just say this could be his only scene, and we never see him again, and that would be enough for me because it's like, well, now we know where he's been.
Oh,
we got
yeah.
closure. And that's what makes it awesome.
Oh, yeah. Like,
we got the answer finally after 10 years.
I know, like, when watching Captain America First Avenger again after seeing Infinity War, it's like, oh, it feels so much better now. Like, fine, we know what happened to you. You're still in the universe, technically, and you can come back.
It's funny because when I was thinking, okay, is that the Watcher?
I thought it was Death for a few seconds.
Well, I thought for Death it was Death. I was like, no, that's a dude. And, so Thanos can have the not gaze. Death's always been represented as a woman.
I mean, hey, 21st century, man. Maybe we'll update it.
Thanos got a case of the not gaze.
I do think that was there because not only to service like how this also works, but I do think that they'll bring him back in some capacity. One would hope that Bucky comes back, and I think it would be really cool if Bucky's Captain America movie is him versus Red Skull. I don't know how that would happen, but I think that would be really cool. But to jump back to Banner for a second, Banner was by far my least favorite Avenger in this film. I thought he was completely annoying in this film. I like Mark Ruffalo a lot, and I like what they did with him in Ragnarok. But the Hulk won't come out thing was really kind of lame, because it's not that he's afraid of Thanos, because the Hulk doesn't come out when he's trying to face Ebony Maw and Corvus. So it's got to be something like the Hulk knows that if Banner turns into the Hulk again, Banner won't come back, which would be kind of a cool thing, because usually in Avengers stuff, like in the TV shows, he's usually just the Hulk and not Banner at all. But I felt like Banner was just really annoying in this film, and the meeting between,
I thought it was funny.
I don't know, his comedy just didn't work for me, because it was the same thing in every scene. And his scene with Natasha from the trailer where they're talking and he's working on the Hulkbuster is cut, and I wish that was left in, because that probably would have helped. But when they meet, Sam says this is awkward when he wasn't there in Age of Ultron to see their relationship in the first place. So I don't even know how he knows about that, unless
I don't think you need to know about that to think of that as an awkward situation. Like the way they're just kind of like looking at each other for a long time.
No, that's fair, but Falcon is the one who says something when he wasn't there, whereas someone like, I don't know, Rhodey could have, but then again, Rhodey wasn't, so I don't know.
Jake, I completely understand where you're coming from. I just didn't necessarily see it that way. My thinking on terms of like the Hulk is that like he doesn't like being on Earth and he doesn't want to come out when it's on Earth. That's just sort of where I was reading it from. I could be entirely off base. We won't know until this is sort of the frustrating thing about only getting half of a movie, especially when it is so much movie. But no, I get where you're coming from. And if there's a character who's just kind of annoying, it's very difficult to ever find anything about that character other than, man, he's annoying me right now.
Yeah, definitely. What's weird is that the trailer had a scene of Hulk and Cap and Black Widow running with the Wakandan army behind them. It's like, I thought that was going to happen in the movie. Like, is that just must be one of those trailer-only scenes?
They said they intentionally altered some shots in the trailer to mislead people. Like, they also altered that shot of Tony taking off his glasses in the trailer. Because in the movie, he's putting on a suit at the same time, but in the trailer, he isn't.
Fascinating. Well, that's trailer magic for you.
Especially when it's like so much special effects. Like, remember in Thor Ragnarok, Hela smashing the hammer was like in an alley, and then in the movie, it's like the worst green screened meadow I've ever seen.
As for Banner, I think I liked him. I can understand your problems. I thought his arc would be the Hulk would come out by the end. But,
I mean, that could still happen in the next one.
It's true, but again, I thought we had him like this movie. I don't know much about the Hulk in the comics in order to like really grasp their relationship, but I do like when they talk to one another. I thought that was kind of cute.
Also, I love the moment where he's trying to make him come out, and Tony's like, "Come on, dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizard."
I did like that joke. We talked a little about Doctor Strange. I really liked him here. I didn't see Doctor Strange the film, unfortunately. I probably should have, but I did get Doctor Strange enough. I think I knew that he had one of the stones. And I definitely liked. I definitely liked his.
I would say I thought he was cooler here than he was in his own movie.
Me too. I think a lot of characters were.
I think he was cooler in Thor Ragnarok than he was in his own movie.
The other thing is like when Wong suddenly just goes deuces, people are like, "Why didn't Wong stay?" I'm like, "Well, Dormammu's still out there, and there's other magical shit that could go. Oh, the Earth is in chaos. Okay, let's go down there and destroy the place."
Yeah, for all you know, Surtur can show up.
And Wong has one of the most important lines of the movie, which is, attachment to the material is detachment from the spiritual. Because and that ties into the whole sacrifice thing, and thinking about love again, like all of the love that the Avengers have for other people is, passionate and irrational, and emotional. And that holds all of the Avengers back from doing what needs to be necessary to stop Thanos from killing off half the people in the universe. Whereas Thanos is completely dispassionate and tries to be as, rational as possible, and he ends up succeeding because of it. And so, attachment to the material, even if it's Tony's attachment to Peter Parker, is a detachment from the quote-unquote spiritual that would have led them on the path to doing the thing for their greater good, which I think is really fascinating.
That is some quality analysis. I didn't even remember that line. That's.
Well, to be fair, you could look at it that way, or you could say that he was just trying to cover up that he was batshit broke.
Well, I saw a meme on Instagram, which was of Wong during Infinity War, and you guys know that meme of Squidward looking outside his window.
Yeah,
it's that, but it's like the circle thing with the sparks, and you just see Thanos getting all six through that. It's like, man, this dude really picked a good time to dip out. I hope he's still alive, because losing him and Doctor Strange would be an interesting place to look forward to in the next movie.
I do.
It's interesting you say that, because we also don't know if Shuri is even still alive.
Yeah,
I think she is. We know Okoye is still alive, but
Well, that's good. Okoye's awesome.
and M'Baku, he's still alive.
Yeah, M'Baku's so cool. I'm so glad he was in this movie.
Yeah, he and he's still awesome.
I felt like they bridged those two characters together really well, because a lot of people speculated that M'Baku would be the villain of the next Black Panther film. And while I was initially hesitant to support that, because we just did a whole internal strife within Wakanda story, and I don't think they would backtrack on that, I'm glad that they made them like T'Challa calls him his brother in this film too. But I think one character who's really important, who we didn't see disappear, and I hope is still alive, is Aunt May. And knowing how jokey Tony Stark was about how the hot aunt thing in Civil War, I'm kind of hoping that Tony has a scene with May in the next film where
that's gonna be heartbreaking.
Dude. And it's I'm already feeling the tears coming just thinking about how that scene would go down.
Hopefully Tony doesn't try to make a deal with Mephisto to bring him back.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
So I think that some characters do get a shaft here. Mostly the Secret Avengers. Well, you can shaft Bucky in anything. I wouldn't even notice, because he's a vanilla wafer with legs. So
I really liked him in Civil War.
Everyone likes Bucky but me. Okay, I get it. That's the thing. Everyone likes him. I'm glad people like him.
He was well written in Civil War. You can't.
Wait, he was in Civil War? Oh, wait, no, that's right. He frowned a lot. That was his character, and he nodded at one point. Oh, man. I'm sorry. I can't get behind this guy. Everyone likes him. And it's cool that people like him. I just think he's a vanilla wafer with he's so boring. And it's not even Sebastian Stan's fault. Have you guys seen I, Tonya? He is so good in that movie. But anyways, what was that? But Captain America, I think, gets the shaft. I think Nat gets the shaft. I think really all the Secret Avengers get the shaft here. But also what's his face? Black Panther. I think it was awesome that we get this tracking shot from behind, and we get this awesome face reveal, and everyone cheered when he showed up in the theater I was in. It was awesome. And I think him and Captain America leading the pack and cutting running so fast away from the pack is a really nice moment. But at the same time, what really did Black Panther serve in this movie? He was they showed up and they're hey dude, can we use your front lawn to fight? And he's yeah, okay. And then he died. That's really all he did in the movie.
Someone really needs to when this comes out on DVD, someone needs to recut that scene of the Outriders swarming the field. Someone needs to put the orc theme from Lord of the Rings in there.
Oh yes. Speaking of the orcs, maybe somebody knows this. Maybe you know this, Deplazilla. Those creature things with the teeth, are they related at all to the Venom symbiote?
No, they're not. Those are the Outriders. They're from Infinity.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, because the way they were drawn, they look like the symbiote.
It's weird because, in Infinity, the Outriders are scouts, not shock troopers.
Well, and people have were speculating before this film came out that Peter would return from space with the symbiote, and that would kind of tie into the Venom thing.
Not anymore.
yeah, but not, and I felt like that theory was kind of apt because the way that they did the Iron Spider symbol, which I love that suit, by the way. I didn't at first, but I love that suit now because they use the like positive and negative space of like the black for the symbol on the chest and use that to turn it into like a reverse symbol of red on the back of the suit. Oh my god, I love that so much. But like the shape of the symbol and the way it wraps around him again looks like very similar to the way that the Venom symbol works, and so I thought that that's the angle that they were going to go for it, but they didn't, and my heart is broken and sad because he died.
So I had a prediction at the end of this.
Thing, so.
First off, you guys are saying it wrong. It's symbiote. Okay, Jenny Slate told me that in the new Venom trailer. Okay. Also, I had a prediction.
I said symbiote.
I know. I was kidding around with you. Why are they calling it symbiote? That's like when your dad is trying to talk cool to you. He's like, this symbiote.
There's a Venom trailer?
Yeah, in the Venom trailer, like Jenny Slate's like, all right, there are these things called symbiotes we are testing. Right? I'm like, what? Why are you saying it like that? Anyway, but when it comes to, oh boy, I lost my train of thought.
At least it's not as bad as Carmine Falcone.
Oh my god. But when it comes to this movie, I had a prediction and I was dead wrong, and I was so sure I was going to be right. I would have put money after my luck with Last Jedi predictions. I would have put money on at the end of the movie. It was going to say the Avengers will return in, and then we would get the title for Avengers 4. And I thought it was going to be called Avengers Secret War. I was so wrong. It just says Thanos will return. I was like, no!
Yeah, I love that. It just says Thanos will return.
Did you guys see the Disney movie timeline? They just said Avengers Untitled for the next Avengers film. Like, they are really playing this close to the chest.
Yeah.
Oh,
I still think it's going to be called. I'll still bet it's called Avengers Secret War.
The actress who plays Gamora said early this year that that she finished her scenes for Infinity War, and she said that she was going back to film Gauntlet. So I think they're going to title it Infinity Gauntlet, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Unless that's the one.
Or maybe that's a working title. Who knows?
I don't know. I mean, part of me wants it to be like New Avengers,
or she could just be
but at the same time, if the next film is about the Avengers sacrificing some of themselves, or at least some of their roles in the MCU, except for like Black Panther, because we know, or Black Widow, because we know she's going to be around. I feel like the fifth Avengers should be New Avengers into Phase 4. But I don't know. I'm just partial to that title.
I've heard.
But who would you want on just out of the blue? Like who do you think would be in the MCU the New Avengers?
Well, I mean, in the comics, it's like, what's the show called? Earth's Mightiest Heroes did that New Avengers episode that had a lot of the like. It
was Spider-Man, Wolverine. Yeah, it was Spider-Man, Wolverine, Thing, and Luke Cage and Iron Fist.
Yep, and that was a really good episode. But I think
two of those characters
aren't
in the
MCU. New Avengers is just having none of the OG Avengers except for one or two. But an important detail that I noticed in this film is because all the Avengers are on these different planets and stuff, we never get the Avengers Assemble. And I really hope we get that before the OG Avengers pass away or whatever in the next film.
Oh yeah, the next Avengers movie for me needs to be the Return of the Jedi. Not necessarily in like execution or tone, but just in terms of like that satisfying happy ending where we're all dancing to the Ewok song. Not really, but something very triumphant to like get us out of this blue that we now felt after Thanos.
So what you're saying is you want like Hulk to sing Yub Nub.
Yeah, pretty much.
They'll be singing Yub Nub at Tony Stark's wedding.
I'll take that. I could totally see that working out.
Right. Yub Nub.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I do want to see one more. Well, that's the thing, is especially because I keep bringing up the whole time travel thing, because I keep hearing rumors about that. that's definitely a way you can bring in X-Men and New Avenger stuff. So like, we kind of did a Days of Future Past on the MCU in some ways. Um,
Well, and the whole thing about the X-Men is really interesting because Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were introduced at the end of Winter Soldier, and then obviously are really big characters in Age of Ultron. But they got their powers from Loki's scepter, which is the Mind Stone. So my prediction was after Thanos messes with the universe and or the Avengers mess with the universe in the next film, however they do it, that opens the door for more mutants, and they can actually call them mutants because they had to call Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver miracles. So I like that. I mean, obviously, I wish Quicksilver was still around. Rest in peace. I think it's really fitting that those two characters were the first real mutants, and that whatever happens in the next film lays the groundwork for more mutants to come in, especially because we know that the Fox deal went through and they can actually do those characters now.
Sorry, Diplo, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of characters I would like to see come into the MCU, I mean, we've talked about X-Men and Fantastic Four, and we'll probably talk more about that, but there's a character I want to see if Thor dies in the next film. And since we already have the Hammer, I really want to see Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah, he might be established, right? His face was on Sakaar.
Yeah, his face was on Sakaar, so and they said he's out there somewhere.
I have like one last complaint about this movie, and that is kind of one of those problems of just the overarching MCU in general, and that is we have that big sacrifice moment with Scarlet Witch and Vision, and I feel like we didn't see any of their relationship. We kind of got it teased at the end of Age of Ultron. We got it. Yep. We saw the simmerings where Vision was putting the moves on Scarlet Witch by suggesting they ordered a pizza. You know, it was starting to go somewhere.
You know, Netflix and chill and all that.
Yeah, he's like constantly, or alternately, we could order a pizza, and he's like trying to keep her in.
I could show you my robot dick.
We could order the Sokovian sausage. I mean, so when it comes to so when it comes to when it comes to this movie, like we jump from Civil War into this, and it's already.
And they had a bit of a falling out in Civil War. Though they made up near the end, but
yeah, they did. But it's like they were kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum in that movie. And so when it was this movie, it's like there's an entire relationship that we just completely skipped, and that makes a lot of that more emotional resolution to their stuff not mean as much. It's like, oh wow, I would have really cared if there was like a Secret Avengers movie somewhere in between Civil War and now.
And I'm really glad that you brought that up because part of the reason why I said earlier that like the structure of the film is really jarring is because we did a real time jump, and like so much has happened for these characters in between the 2 years of Civil War and Infinity War that I feel like I mean, part of me is just a comic book fan, is like I want to spend time in this post-Sokovia Accords world with the Avengers, and we got a little bit of that with Spider-Man Homecoming, and that was great. But I wanted to spend time
too, thankfully.
Yeah, but like I wanted to spend time with these characters in this world, and there was just such a jump that it is kind of jarring just on that level. But I do have another little complaint about this film, which is how we shaft the Sokovia Accords and how we completely like throw out any interesting political discussion of the debate that was sparked in Civil War. Because Civil War, love it as I do, is like my main problem with that film is we start out that film talking about should we give up our right to choose, and ultimately I think Cap is right in that we can't do that, and that the Accords are bad because the Avengers give up their right to choose. But then as soon as Peggy Carter dies, literally at the end of that scene, that movie shifts from being about superheroes giving up their right to choose, which is a really interesting discussion to have, to all of the Avengers specifically Tony and Cap, are so emotionally compromised at this point that they can't even have this discussion.
Yeah.
And even though I like what we do with that, I was really disappointed that we didn't try to make Civil War about the Accords. And then here in Infinity War, with the same people who made that movie and made that choice in Civil War, we throw, any validity in Tony's point in Civil War out the window by just saying the Accords are a bad thing within like a 30-second scene. And that's really annoying.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
I don't know if they were saying the Accords were bad as much as they were too much of a compromise for this situation.
Well, and I think moving forward, the governments of the UN is going to say, yeah, the thing is we had half of the world die, so we can't really afford to have the Accords anymore because we need you guys. So I think just tracking the timeline of what happened here, we start off Civil War with the discussion about the Accords, and then we flip immediately to not about that because it's about a family struggle, an emotional struggle, and at that point it's like, why are we having the Accords in the first place? But then when we pick up with Rhodes, he and the rest of the Avengers have decided that it's a bad thing because that it's, fractured this family, and then in the next film we're probably going to have to get rid of it. It's like, what's the point of even doing the Accords in the first place if you're not going to make it about the Accords? And maybe that criticism is just not objective or not correct, but that's something that's always bugged me about Civil War that was just rekindled when I watched this movie because of how quickly and nonchalantly they threw any validity in Tony's point and Rhodey's point and Vision's point when he argues in Civil War to Captain America, just completely under the bus.
I do agree with you, Jake, that Civil War does just become, at the end of the day, just an emotional movie and doesn't fall on the side of either Tony's right or Cap's right. And
I would argue that's kind of the point.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with that argument as well. But I can definitely see why some people might get annoyed by that. I don't want to talk about my own personal issues with the Accords or lack thereof or stuff like that because we could be here all day.
I know, I also agree with that point where it's like, to me, the Civil War is only about the Accords on an exterior level. That movie at its core is not about the Accords. That is just sort of like a device, a story device used to tell the broader story of two men who are not willing, who are not in any mental capacity to be having an argument, and they're having a feud. But that being said, the Accords are something that we sort of established that would logically have long-running ramifications, and then they just don't. So
exactly,
that's kind of always been Marvel's, I guess, issue with its continuity. Well, I would say overall, big picture-wise, the continuity's been pretty solid. They don't have a good track record of following things through. Winter Soldier to Age of Ultron. At the end of Winter Soldier, Hydra's back. The evil Nazi organization is back in business. And then in Age of Ultron, it's Hydra's dead. Baron von Strucker's dead. Sadly, that beautiful monocle of his is dead. Honestly, I felt more invested in the Hydra thing because I would watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 at the time. I dropped off really quick after that. But they've always kind of never been good at keeping a very long track record with their continuities. I mean, certain characters' arcs definitely, like Tony Stark as a character throughout the entire MCU, I think is brilliant. I can definitely see the through line between Iron Man 1 and here. But with other things like the Hydra thing or the Accords thing, they never really follow through or stick with it that long. And in some cases I understand because it's a movie, so you can't really do that sort of truly episodic thing. But at the same time, you could probably have done it better. Speaking of Tony, just to go back to him for a second, how do you feel about his new arc reactors thing?
I love it. It's cool. I really like how he literally is the suit now. I like how he literally can just turn it on and off whenever he wants. I mean, obviously he's still going to have a closet full of expensive suits because he's Tony, but I think that's a really cool place to take his powers. Definitely. Also,
sorry.
go
ahead, Doc.
I was just gonna say his suit reminds me a lot of the suit he had in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, like with the blue eyes and everything.
I think that thematically his suit works really well, even though I think the best Iron Man design of like a traditional suit, because a lot of the extra ones in Iron Man 3 are really cool, but they don't really count in my mind, is the Mark 45 from the end of Age of Ultron. Like, that design is just like a perfect Iron Man suit. But I think Connor was right earlier that the CGI and like the lighting and stuff can make it look really plasticky. And I've said from the beginning that I just don't care for the CGI for his suit. I thought that his suit looked terrible throughout the movie, except for when it was broken. And I like the detail in the fight with Thanos where like part of the suit is destroyed and he's like transferring part of it on like his hand into a weapon on his other hand, and then so he's like transferring like the mass of the suit to other parts of his body to create different weapons and stuff. And I love the attention to detail in that scene.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And okay, going back to the continuity thing for a second, I really felt that definitely characters have always been stronger than actual events sometimes. So yeah,
So is there? I was about to say, if there's anything else, Joel, do you think there's anything, or do you want to go to the like speculation for 4? Because I'm starting to like I haven't eaten all day, so I'm starting to like lose mental focus.
No, I was about to say we are almost running on 2 hours, so yeah.
I just want to.
There is one more thing before. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it's cool. It's cool.
Okay. The one thing that I will say that is kind of unusual is that Tony is the only one who's really able to hurt Thanos physically. Like, not even the Hulk is able to do that, but Tony's able to make him bleed, even a little bit. And I thought that was kind of strange.
Yeah. So I guess now. Sorry, Doc. Go ahead.
I would just want to bring up the thing I brought up at the beginning of the video, the whole thing with Gamora. I really love the scene from a directing standpoint, a writing and an acting standpoint, the scene where Thanos sacrifices Gamora. I think it's really well done. I think it's really heartbreaking. I think the performances are really good and the music is really good. I have heard complaints that this kind of borders that her, the way she dies and the fact that it mainly there to affect Thanos kind of borders on the women in refrigerators trope. I can see where those complaints are coming from, but on a second time, I found myself a little more okay with it, not only because there's possible that she could still be alive, but also because you could argue they've kind of been building up to this ending for Gamora with the other Guardians movies. Again, I can understand why people have issue with the way that her character is taken out in the movie, but at the same time, I do think if it does fall into place with where this whole arc is going, I think it could ultimately work in the end if they play it right.
So yeah. So now that we're wrapping up on 2 hours, I think we'll start to head into the speculation for Avengers 4. So, Deppelzilla, before you lose complete mental focus, what are some of your speculation for Avengers 4?
Hold on, guys. First off, I have started load number 3, but also if it's okay with you guys, I'm not really into the whole speculation thing, so I might have to dip out.
Okay, well...
So if we're almost in the end, you're kind of like Vision, I guess.
Yeah, you guys are going to have to kill me. Maybe I'll get...
And then we'll rewind time and take your face off or something. I don't know.
Give me your face.
All right, well, if you gotta go, Connor, then Thanos got you too. Do you Deppelzilla want to, Jake? Do you want to stay with Deppelzilla and Doc? Just a little speculation.
If
sure.
I
mean,
we
already
because I'm starving.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just wrap this up then. We don't really have to speculate about Avengers 4 if we don't want to.
We can do a little bit. I mean,
I'm good.
Well, I'll wrap it up like this. Like, who do you guys think is definitely going to come back?
Iron Man, probably.
No, I mean come back to life.
Oh,
Peter Parker, Black Panther, Groot, Star-Lord, probably Gamora.
I'm 50-50 on Doctor Strange. I think they could bring him back, but also I think it would be really interesting if he wasn't with them, because like Doctor Strange is, if you think about it, Doctor Strange is kind of the most powerful Avenger they have, pretty much. So like if they keep
excluding Thor.
yeah. Yeah, like in terms of the mystic side of the Marvel universe, Doctor Strange is probably one of the most powerful characters they have. So like keeping him dead I think would definitely up the stakes, but I could see it going either way.
Yeah,
I don't think that they would keep him permanently dead, given that his movie came out only a year and a half ago. Like, so what's really the point of introducing him if you're not going to keep him around long term?
my speculation is anybody who wasn't introduced in Phase 1, and that time travel will be involved in this movie somehow. Those are my two big speculations things.
I think that if we are going to get another big villain after Thanos, it's probably going to be like Kang or Doom.
That's actually a good one.
Or if they get Fantastic Four Galactus.
I think that I'm not convinced that the Avengers are going to travel through time to fix this, because when you have all 6 stones, you can just snap your fingers and undo what Thanos did, and obviously making a few small changes. But I think that given that we have Thanos messing with time and the Avengers messing with the timeline of everything, it would make a lot of sense for the next big bad to be the guy who wants to conquer all of time.
Yeah, that would make it good for King.
Yeah, Kang would be really cool.
Maybe that's how Thanos dies. Kang kills him.
Yeah. An end credit scene.
What else? Like, I guess like if you want to go other, well, no, aside from Thanos and Ultron's dead, and the only one left would be Kang would be Doom would have to be the other one. But that depends on the deal. But then again, Fox could easily go, hey, share this, because we're sharing skulls and watches with you.
Yeah. Oh, looks like the dog's broken.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Also, Surtur's still around at the end of Thor Ragnarok, so...
He's dead.
Oh, Surtur is?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well...
I'm sorry.
Now that we're wrapping up for about 2 hours, unless anyone had like one more final thought, I'll just wrap us up, shall we? All good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Well, folks, thank you for joining our Infinity Cast. Thanos is getting to me. I can feel my molecules starting to evaporate. And, well, hopefully we'll all return next time. So, until next time, Thanos will return. Bye.
Motherfucker.